Hi, I'm Lilith Dorsey, and welcome to the first official episode of Witchcraft and Voodoo with myself and fellow Pathos blogger Sable Aradia.
And hi there, I'm Sable Aradia. I'm a Wiccan Priestess. Lilith is a Voodoo Priestess, and we are here to discuss, compare, and contrast uh, Voodoo and Witchcraft and talk about what we have in common and what's different, and to answer your questions. So, welcome.
Welcome, everybody. I think one of the things I wanted to start about talking, well, I was thinking the best and the worst, and then I was kind of thinking about it in my mind. It was like the good and the bad and the not so ugly. So I feel like, what do you feel like is the best things about your tradition?
What do I feel are the best things about my tradition? Okay, are we talking about Wicca in particular, witchcraft in general, my tradition in Wicca in particular, or how should I answer that?
However you want to answer it.
Okay. All right. What do I really like about it? Okay, witchcraft and Wicca, of course, are often considered to be two separate things, right? Wicca is a religion that is an earth religion that, we'll talk about it more in the course of different episodes, but it has to do with the cycle of seasons, gods and goddesses. Some people kind of believe that all gods are one god and all goddesses are one goddess. So that's one thing, right? And then a lot of Wiccans also practice witchcraft, which is basically folk magic. Now, for me, one of the big things that attracted me to the whole affair in the first place was magic. I'm fascinated by the art of magic. I really like doing it. I like everything that goes into it. I've seen it being effective in my own life. So I think that that's a really exciting part. You don't have to be a Wiccan to practice magic, but the two do go together very well. As far as Wicca goes, what do I like in particular about it? The faith made sense to me. I was always a very mystical kid. My parents are agnostic. I would go to church with the friends that I grew up with, and nothing quite did it for me. It was for me. I found God more when I was in nature than I did in any building, and I thought it made sense that gods came in male and female. Otherwise, what's the point of the female half of the human race, right? So I liked the cycle of the seasons, and I saw the parallels in my own life, and for me, that made a lot of sense. So I like that aspect of it. I also like the fact that you don't have to have any particular interpretation of it to be a Wiccan. You can view it as a metaphor. You can view them as literal deities that you're dealing with. You can view it as psychological archetypes that perhaps have a greater race consciousness than you individually would invest it with, or any combination thereof. And it's also compatible with modern theories about science and evolution. So all of that together, that's what I really like. That's a start anyway. How about yourself?
That's great. Well, again, I don't really know exactly what tradition I'm answering from. I mean, I think I practice a lot of New Orleans style voodoo, and for me, that's really a lot about honoring the ancestors and honoring the traditions of the city. It's a lot about the food and the music and the sacred dance and things like that, and also some of the people that were there. If you talk about Dr. John Montagny, if you talk about Marie Laveau, people like that are still honored today. And even growing up, for me personally, I think it was the connection, and this is why I consider, Voodoo and Lukumi, Santeria to be earth religions, because at their heart, we're talking about, the god or the goddess or the Loa or the Orisha of the river, of the waterfall, of the train tracks, of the machete. There's all these different elements that radiate through. And for me, I could feel that. And it's not just, necessarily the energy in a god or a goddess form. It's everything from that element of fire, that drum beat that you hear when, you know, you're calling for Shango. It's all of these different things that come together to make all the energy and the beauty of the religion. And that's what really called to me, I think, from the longest time. But, you know, each of my different traditions are for different things, you know. It depends on what's happening. And that's, you know, how I practice. And it's interesting that several of my, you know, godmothers also came from different traditions and grew up practicing different traditions. So I think it kind of makes sense that that's how I carry on. But my own personal house, you know, we're very eclectic. We'll do lots of different things.
That's cool. Right on. I hear what you're saying about that, and I agree with you. I think that the cool thing about the pagan religions, all of them, right, is that, and it's cool that, you know, the Afro-diasporic traditions are participating in the pagan community now. I think that's really great, because we have so much in common, I think. And one of the things that I really like, it's not a spectator sport, you know? You're not there to do it at a distance. It's to be experienced, you know, like you say, through the music, through the food, through the dancing, through all of that.
Yeah, it all comes together, you know, hopefully. Hopefully it all comes together really well. Yeah.
Right on. Okay. So what else we were going to kind of briefly discuss our dislikes, I think, too. Is that something else we talked about?
Yeah.
What we're...
Yeah. Oh, things I don't like. There's a long list of things I don't like. I mean, it's funny, it's because this is a tradition that's not, you know, I can't declare myself this kind of person and then go and teach others and stuff like that. It really has to be passed down from others, and it's a sort of oral tradition in that way, in a lot of ways. You know, they say you can't get oral from a book, which is you can't get spiritual knowledge from a book. So there are initiations you have to go through, and a lot of people try and sidestep around it, and then a lot of people try and tell other people what to do, and they do things that are really not, you know, I mean, it is serious business, you know. They do things that could be harmful to themselves or others, and it gets kind of scary sometimes. And that makes me sad, because people think that that's all there is to the tradition, you know. I like, just, what did I say the other day? People drag things down to the lowest demon denominator. You know, it's like they just find the lowest demon that they can and pin it on that. And that's really something is much more wider and scarier going on, I think.
Right. Okay, sure. I can identify with that too.
Yeah, what's your worst moment?
Well, okay, I come from a tradition that is, it comes from the Allguard lineage, right? So to some degree, we have that going on too, right? And yeah, a person, anybody can declare themselves a Wiccan, right? That's something that's been going on for a long time. And anybody who says otherwise is denying reality, in my opinion, because the cat's been out of the bag now for at least 30 years. So give it up. It ain't going back in, right? But some traditions have specific things that have to be done. And, you know, I started as an eclectic, right? I started with books like, you know, like Wicca, for Guide for a Solitary Practitioner. I started with that stuff. And for me, it wasn't enough, right? Like I started with that, and I'm like, okay, now the door is open. Where do I go from here, right? So I sought out teachers, right? And I sought out people who'd been doing it longer than I had. And eventually I got connected to the tradition that I'm involved in now, which is the Star Sapphire. And people, you know, there's politicking, and everybody acts like it's a high school, you know, and some people are so concerned with how they appear in the little sandbox that they blow it all up out of proportion. And, you know, I really hate that small town gossipy aspect to that. I find that very frustrating. But on the other hand, I do think there are some things that you can learn through initiatory traditions that you just can't learn otherwise. And, you know, it's even if you end up in a big fight with people in your tradition, right? Which happens, right?
It does happen a lot.
I got my politics going on right now, but whatever, right? Like, you get the benefit of the experience, and then you don't realize what you don't know until somebody shows you. Right? So I think it's worth it. But yeah, that's a big pain. And you also spoke about the lowest demon denominator.
Yeah.
I have to say, I am so tired of. So, like, do you worship Satan or what? I get so sick of it. I mean, okay, I've been doing this for more than 20 years now, right? I've done initiations. If I were any other religion, right, I would be like, people would have respect. You know what I'm saying? Like they would go, oh well, that's Mother Sable. She knows, and whatever, right? But because
Sure.
it's Wicca, you don't get any of that, right? You don't get any of that. People half the time don't take you seriously, and when they do, they're afraid. They give you weird sidelong glances if they're not trying to convert you to Christianity, which makes me very tired too. I mean, if you really thought that I was, some demon worshiper or something, why are you bothering me? Maybe I'll just text you. Go away. But obviously they don't really think that. They're just trying to harass you because they think you're wrong. Right? And that's very annoying. Nobody goes up to a Buddhist monk in a saffron robe and tries to tell him to come to God. It doesn't happen, right? So why do they do this to you? It's crap, and it's really annoying.
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, I get all this stuff about demon possession and stuff like that. I did an interview once where someone called in and started talking about, demons touching him in the middle of the night in naughty places. And I was just like, what do you say to that?
Practice your psychic hygiene is what I usually say.
Well, yes, I told him he needed to be cleansed off, which apparently he'd heard before, so that was a theme, you know. But it's just, I think that it is. There's a lot of misconceptions, and that's all people know, and there's nothing else.
It's frustrating because nobody wants to hear it either. I've done enough dealing with the mainstream media to have a real sense that what they want is a nice titillating story of orgies in the woods that they can, scandalize their readers with. They don't really want to hear, no, we're pretty boring. We get together and have potlucks. They don't want to hear that.
No, it's very true. It's very true. There's no, chicken heads, and, that's few and far between, quite frankly. Ay, ay, ay. No, but I don't know. And I mean, I think some people, they don't know what they're dealing with, and they go out and they rush into these things and they end up over their heads. And that's, sad, not necessarily, I mean, it is unpleasant, but it's also sad, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I can understand that. Like, I've had some encounters with what I believe are some of the lower. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Here in Canada, uh, there's a strong tradition of voodoo in central Canada, mostly around Montreal and Quebec, right? And it's sort of it's an interesting point because I think there's a lot of that French culture involved in that form of voodoo. And that's neat because then from the other side, you have a lot of this Wicca and paganism inspired by Wicca coming together, right? And so voodoo's spreading across the country. It's gotten now, like 10 years ago, you could only find Wicca stuff in metaphysical stores. But when I did my book tour a couple years ago, right? Well, a year and a half, right? You found things like, those blue washer balls and things like that as far west as Alberta, right? So yeah, so it's spreading, right? And so that coming together is very interesting. And I think that now I've connected with a couple of the Loa in a way that I think they're trying to. Okay, if you believe in literal gods, right, which I do on alternate Thursdays, right? at the very least, I believe that some thought forms have personality and that this is often greater than the individual impression of them, right? So I made these connections, but they're used to doing things a certain way, right? And they're very primal and they're very powerful. And, you know, there were a couple missteps that, I made, even though because I know nothing about voodoo, right? I'm a witch, right? So we kind of had to negotiate, and so I can only imagine what someone who, saw the serpent and the rainbow, right, and then decides they want to pursue voodoo can get into, right? Like that could be a little dangerous and a little overwhelming, and I see, why a lot of people might get the wrong idea.
Oh, definitely. And that makes me so sad, because Wade Davis went to Harvard, where my priestess Bonnie Devlin went to. I mean, he could have made much more responsible a choice with the film. And, even the research is questionable to begin with. But, there we go. Don't get me started. Zombies and Zora Neale Hurston and all of that. So it's a long lineage of things that went wrong there. So, but yeah, people have a lot of misconceptions about it. And it's really unpleasant. And I feel like, witchcraft and voodoo are two of the things that people still feel perfectly justified in making fun of. And that's not fair,
True that. I feel your pain. Yep.
Yeah, no, it is. It's very, very sad. It's very sad, I tell you. I don't know. There's a lot of silly things too, though. When I was thinking about, whatever misconceptions about witchcraft, I was thinking about that scene from Buffy where Willow's talking about putting yak cheese in her bra. And I was like, well, we have a lot of things where it might be, I've had yak hair. We've done some stuff with that. There's some weird stuff you do with voodoo, let me tell you.
Sure, why not? But I'm sure that, witchcraft has its own, like it does. It has its own things, right? One of the earliest anti-hex spells I know involves putting a bunch of sharp things in a glass bottle and peeing in it. There's a reason for that, but, if that's all you've heard, I can imagine people will go, what the hell, but.
No, there's a lot of things about peeing. We got a lot of stuff about peeing. I think peeing's also a universal, like spitting,
Right. We'll have to do like some comparative magical stuff at some point. That'll be fun.
Yeah, that would be really cool. I like that. Yeah. No, there's definitely some, strange stuff you have to do. But, like everything else, it's how bad do you want it? This is what it is. There really aren't any shortcuts. That's, I think one of the things that upsets me because people think there are shortcuts. When I first started, I interviewed an author who was a third generation Santero, and he was telling me that when he wrote his books, they used to tell him to substitute for the ingredients that they carried in the store.
Right.
So they could make more money, and he refused to do that, and he got in trouble with them and whatever. But I think there is a lot of that. People just want to promote their own thing, and it's rough out there.
I find that a lot of the people who come to witchcraft they hear, oh, you can basically make it up as you go along and you can believe whatever you want, and they think that that's a free license to just kind of ignore the parts they don't like. And sure, yes, you can do that, but you're not going to get anywhere if you do. If you're really serious about it, there's no way to do it other than to practice the techniques that are taught to you, learn the things you're supposed to learn, right, and do the work. And just because you don't like this particular thing doesn't mean that you don't have to learn it if you want to accomplish something, right?
No, that's true. That's very true. I agree with that 100%. Practice, practice, practice. Yeah.
Well, like any skill, right?
Yeah. But I also think there's some people who are good at some things and some people who are not good at some things, you know. I mean, one of the beauties to me about the Lukumi religion is that, you know, for some of the initiations, there'll be, you know, priestesses who sit there sewing the gowns for everybody, you know, doing a prayer with each stitch, you know, people who sit there learning the songs for 40 years, the drum calls, all of that stuff, you know, and it's really like everybody has their own specialty, and that's what they, you know, come to the table, and you get gatherings of, you know, 40, 50, 100 people. It's really beautiful.
I've just given the siren a chance to pass because I
I
think it's
know.
probably going to overwhelm everything.
The guy downstairs is playing the harmonica. It's great. It's great over
I
here.
haven't heard the harmonica. It's okay. I'm sure that
It's
nobody
bad.
else
It's
is hearing
bad.
it either. Yeah. Oh, that's. I get that. Yeah. You know, like one of the reasons why I sought out initiatory craft is because I mean, like, okay, it hasn't been around that long, really. You know, Gerald Gardner more or less invented Wicca with the help of Doreen Valiente and his earliest coven. We know this, right? But that was more than 50 years ago. So people have had 50 years to develop techniques. And the other thing is that a lot of the stuff that they use came from stuff that was older than that, right? It was a synthesis kind of you know, the folk magic of Britain and some ceremonial magic and the Western mystery tradition and what people believed Druidry was at the time, which has turned out to be completely wrong. But that's what the anthropological theory was, right? So they mingled all this stuff together, and this is what we call Wicca, right? Which is why I argue that it's a syncretic religion, like people often say about the Afro-diasporic traditions, right?
Yes.
So, but people have been doing it a certain way for a certain period of time, and why? Because it works, right? So, you know, if you don't want to do that stuff, then you know, I don't really, you know, understand why you're studying it. There's lots of easier ways to do things, you know, and I think it's damaged Wicca's reputation a lot. Generally, people who are serious practitioners hear, oh, you're a Wiccan, and they don't take you seriously there either, because they're used to the people who are reading you know, a couple of books and then, okay, well, you know, I'm a witch now with all my, you know, new age stuff that I've put a god and goddess varnish on, right? And you know, you can do it any way you want, right? You really can, and cool, right? And it's all, in my opinion, as long as it all follows a certain pattern, it's all Wicca, right? But there is, like, if you really want to be a Wiccan priest or a priestess, right? There's serious stuff. You can't just, you know, put on a robe and get together in the full moon and, you know, call yourself a third degree, you know, priestess initiated on a mountaintop. You know, you can't do it.
Oh, no, you can't. Oh.
Maybe we should finish this up on a happier note. What would you like people to know about your tradition or traditions?
Well, I think for me and for a lot of my godchildren, one of the most beautiful things is the connection to the ancestors that we're allowed to have in the religion. It's like they still, I don't want to say live on because it sounds like a cliche, but they definitely transform and still bless us with their energy in lots of different ways in the tradition. And that's really special, I think, especially for those of us who've lost people who were very close to us.
Wicca itself doesn't have a very long tradition of connection with the ancestors. I think probably because the early Wiccans were kind of black sheep. But I see the value of it, right? And witchcraft as a folk tradition does. It has quite a lot of that, right? So I see where you're going with that, and I think that's awesome, and I value that too, and I think that a lot of practicing witches also value that. It's work I've been doing more lately than I did when I started. So, yeah, I don't
What
know.
would you like people to know about witchcraft?
I don't know. What would I like people to know? I think I've already kind of covered the big things that I'd like people to know, right? It's that, you know, I take it seriously, I take it seriously. Not everybody does, I guess, just like not everybody, not every Christian takes Christianity seriously. Lots of people
Right.
go to church, not everybody becomes a nun. Right? But studying to be a priestess in your chosen faith is a calling like becoming a nun. It's something that is a serious commitment, and it takes a lot of work. And if that doesn't mean anything to you, then I mean, like, you don't have to collect initiations like merit badges, right? You can just be a Wiccan. You don't have to do all that, right? um, yeah, I guess, what would I like people to know? I'm serious about it. you know Take it seriously. It's been around here for a while now. It's not going away. It's not a fad, and it's not something that people do to freak out Christians. It's we mean it.
That's great. I like that. It's not here to freak out Christians. I freaked out some Christians once. It was okay. It wasn't so bad. But
Known to do that a time or two.
right. So I guess we're gonna do this again, maybe in a couple of weeks.
I hope so. I think we're off to a good start. I've really enjoyed it. I hope that you have.
Me too. It was great. It's great. So stay tuned to my blog and Sable's blog and the YouTube channels, which we will post the links for. And is there anything else you want to say?
No, just if you're looking for this episode in particular, it will be on Lilith's channel. That's Lilith Dorsey on YouTube, because we're switching back and forth whose channel it was on. And yeah, but links will be in all of our social media.
And last week it was on Sable's channel. Can you tell them what your channel is?
Yeah, mine's just Sable Aradia. All one word. Nice and convenient.
Fantastic. All right, so I guess we'll end this here and see you next time.
Nice to see you, Lilith. Thanks.
Thank you.